This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy. We go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into something really quite extraordinary. It starts, believe it or not, with a TikTok scroll and ends up involving a, unprecedented national exam protocol right in Paris.
Exactly. And the sources we're drawing on, they give this incredibly detailed, almost first-hand account of what went down. It's quite a unique window into how people behave under, let's say, very unusual circumstances. Lots of surprises in there.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack that what happens when you take a really extreme step to fix a common problem, like cheating, and what kind of, unexpected connections or maybe revelations pop up in that kind of, almost experimental situation.
Let's dive in. So you mentioned the start. It really was just a spark, wasn't it?
Yeah, apparently this journalist, Anna, she wasn't even looking for a story. She was just doom scrolling. No, the source says evading on TikTok.
And she lands on this clip. It's short. An interview from RTL Radio. And it's this French literature teacher talking about student cheating. Clearly, she's just had enough.
And she didn't just complain, did she? She offered a solution. A pretty radical one.
Oh, absolutely. Very calmly. Sort of matter-of-fact, almost tired sounding. She just says it. The only real way to stop students from cheating during exams would be to make them take the tests naked.
Wow. Just like that. Naked.
Just like that. And she wasn't just saying it for shock value, it sounds like. She was reacting to a specific thing the students were doing.
Okay, what was that? How are they getting around the usual checks?
Well, it was pretty clever, you have to admit. During mock exams, they'd put decoy phones, old ones, broken screens into the box everyone puts their phone in. But they'd keep their real smartphones hidden on them to actually cheat.
Sneaky. And hard to catch, I imagine.
Very. And the stats really backed up the problem. Let's see, 560 candidates caught the year before, which was a 14% jump from the year before that. And over half involved screens.
So it was a growing tech-fueled problem.
Exactly. And the source described her tone perfectly. Low, calm, tired, like a system giving out one sigh at a time. Just sheer exhaustion with it all.
That description, that weariness, that's what caught Anna's attention.
Seems so. Her journalistic gut kicked in. She sends the link to her editor. One word. France.
And that was enough.
Apparently so. Next thing, she's got the assignment, teamed up with a photographer, David, heading to Paris to cover a national exam at the Sorbonne.
So they get to Paris, and the source notes something about the city itself.
Yeah, it mentions Paris felt lighter, more porous, and somehow more sincere. Kind of sets a strange, almost unreal tone for what's coming, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so first up, Ministry of Education, getting credentials.
Right. Described as a very clean official building, polished tile, brass fixtures, very proper. The woman at the press desk, efficient, polite. But then she hands them this document.
And this document has the catch, the condition for actually observing the exam.
And it's blunt. No clothing, no personal objects, full parity.
Full parity, no clothes. Wow. How did they phrase it to avoid, sounding crude?
Very carefully. The document used terms like device-neutral, unencumbered, uniform procedure. It studiously avoided the word naked. Very clinical.
And Anna and David, what did they say? I mean, that's a huge ask for a journalist.
According to the source, Anna read it, paused for maybe a second, and just said, "We'll do it."
Really? Just like that.
And David immediately backed her up. We go in together. Real commitment to getting the story from the inside.
That's dedication. Okay, so fast forward to the official press briefing at the Sorbonne itself.
Right. Same composed woman from the ministry is there. And she uses this very specific terminology. She calls it a full-spectrum parity protocol developed with institutional partners and cognitive behavior specialists. And the reason? In response to a documented rise in technological fraud.
Okay, so they're framing it very scientifically, very formally.
Exactly. And they stressed the goal wasn't surveillance. It was about fairness, a rebalancing of attention. Getting back to the exam as a moment of thought, not competition. Which is an interesting angle, right? Does removing the means to cheat actually foster deeper thought?
That's the core question, isn't it? Did they address the obvious practical issues? Like, was this even legal?
They did. In the Q&A, they said it was reviewed and cleared by the National Ethics Board. And crucially, participation was optional. Students could opt out.
Oh, okay. Did many?
Apparently not. Only 4 out of 427 candidates chose to withdraw and take the exam elsewhere under normal rules.
4. That's it. That's tiny. Suggests people were okay with it or just resigned.
Hard to say for sure, but yeah, very low opt-out rate.
What about, practical things like if someone was menstruating?
Addressed directly. They were discreetly offered a standardized protection kit and optional undergarment. Totally voluntary, medically approved. They seem to have thought through the logistics quite thoroughly.
Sounds like it. So Anna and David leave the briefing, knowing they're going in the next day.
Yeah, the source mentions a quiet walk back to the hotel. Probably a lot to process.
I bet. Okay, exam morning. What was the vibe like at the Sorbonne?
Quiet. Dense queue of students. Most in sweats, gym clothes, no bags allowed, of course. The source describes them as focused, not tense exactly, but closed in, like they were mentally preparing.
Did Anna and David get to talk to any of them beforehand?
Briefly. Reactions were mixed, but understanding mostly. One said, "It's strange, but I understand. No one wants to fail because someone else cheated."
Practical.
Another girl was like, "Not really looking forward to it, but we're all doing it. That makes it less weird." Sort of a shared ordeal mentality.
Safety in numbers, maybe?
Possibly. And one poor guy was worried what his mom would think, but he really needed the grade for normal SEEP. Real-world pressures meeting this bizarre situation.
Right. So before the main hall, there's a preparation room.
Yes, high-ceilinged former seminar room. They got beige paper wristbands like at a concert and these soft-soled white sandals.
And then the undressing. Was it awkward?
Yeah.
Regimented?
The source says it was simple, silent, almost ritualistic. No protocol for embarrassment, only the ritual of doing it because it had been written down. Just get it done.
Wow. Okay. And then they walk into the Grand Amphitheater, this historic, massive space.
Immense, circular, tiered like a theater. Pasteur gave speeches there. UNESCO met there. May 68 protests. And now, just silence.
Filled with 427 naked students, spaced out.
Exactly. Seats in a staggered grid far apart. Each had a little folding tablet arm for writing and a white towel placed on the bench.
A towel. Okay. Practical touch.
And a huge analog clock at the front. No watches allowed, naturally. Total removal of external devices and markers.
So everyone's in, seated, the exam starts. Does that initial weirdness, the tension, stick around?
That's the really fascinating part. According to Anna's account, no. It dissolved surprisingly quickly. The nudity itself started fading, like, not gone, but dulled like background noise you'd tuned out.
Really? It just became normal?
Or at least secondary. It was less a condition than a detail. The absolute focus shifted to the task, the exam itself. People were just, doing exam things, scratching their heads, closing their eyes to think, chewing pencils, mundane stuff.
It suggests the environment, however strange, kind of receded once the mental effort began.
Exactly. The core purpose took over.
But there was this small human moment between Anna and David amidst all this.
Yeah, quite poignant. Anna dropped her pencil. It rolled. David was sitting behind her, observing. And he made this tiny involuntary sound, like a gasp or intake of breath.
Oh.
When she glanced back, he was apparently flushed, holding his notepad very vertically against his lap. Protective instinct? Maybe.
Maybe. And Anna's reaction?
Just a half smile. Indulgent, almost tender.
Yeah.
A little moment of shared humanity, unspoken connection in this incredibly sterile, odd setting.
That's lovely, actually. So, stepping back, what does this say about perception, about being present?
Well, Anna reflected that her body existed but distantly, like furniture. The actual absence of fabric no longer registered, consciously after a while. The whole room became neutral territory. No one was hiding, but no one was showing off either. No one hid. No one flaunted.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? When you strip away all the usual social cues, the clothes, the accessories, what's left? What do you focus on?
Precisely. What becomes truly present when the superficial is removed?
So the exam ends, people get dressed again. What was the mood as they came out?
A bit strange. Dressed again, but a little off, the source says, like putting a costume back on after being yourself. And nobody talked much at first, a kind of shared decompression, maybe?
But then something interesting happened with the journalists.
Yes. Really telling. The students would only talk to Anna and David, the journalists who had actually been inside the exam hall with them.
Ah, the shared experience barrier.
Totally. One girl apparently walked up to another reporter and just asked point blank, "Were you in there?" If the answer was no, she walked away. Us and them.
So what did the U.S. group, the students, actually say about the experience afterwards?
A real range. Simple stuff like weird, long, one evocative one felt like being underwater.
Underwater.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Another said, I forgot I was naked until the end, which reinforces that idea of the nudity fading.
Right.
Someone else was just pragmatic. Honestly, it was fine. I thought it would be worse. And maybe the most insightful. I was expecting some kind of breakdown, but no. Just high silence.
No drama, just quiet focus.
Yeah.
It defies expectation, doesn't it? That lack of collective meltdown.
It really does. It points to a kind of resilience, or maybe just the power of a shared, defined task.
And this shared experience didn't end there. It led to something social.
It did. An invitation went around, specifically for those who were in there, students and observers alike, to an apartment party that evening.
A party. Okay, what was that like? Did people stay? Unencumbered?
Apparently, yes. When Anna and David arrived still clothed, everyone else was already naked again. But no one blinked at their clothes.
No judgment either way.
Exactly. No one looked twice. Just an immediate sense of belonging, of being part of this very specific, very strange club. The usual social barriers just seemed gone.
That's fascinating. What kinds of interactions happened? Any memorable details?
Oh, yeah. Little vignettes. There was a guy pointing to a big scar from a scooter crash saying, makes you visible, like embracing imperfection.
Oh.
A girl had a tiny tattoo, Fritrol plus Z, on her thigh. She called it undue culture. Just these little flashes of personality, completely unadorned.
Very revealing.
And there was dancing, spontaneous, apparently quite ungraceful, but joyous. A real release.
And then the highlight, the sock paradox. Tell us about that.
Right. Someone just threw out the question, why is it so much worse to wear just socks than to be totally naked? Which is strangely true, isn't it?
It really is. What did people say?
The answers were brilliant. Someone said, because socks are trying too hard. Another offered, because your feet are dressed and your soul's confused.
Oh, that's deep and funny.
And maybe the best, because it screams, I was halfway out the door and forgot shame.
That's perfect. And Anna's contribution.
She apparently quipped, while still in David's arms, honestly deserves peer review. Just captured the absurdity and the weird truth of it all.
It's amazing how humor surfaces in these situations. So this party, this discussion, it points to something deeper, they realized.
I think so. People started reflecting on what the whole exam experience, and maybe even the party, revealed. Someone described it as that feeling when you stop posing for a photo and just breathe.
Letting go of the performance.
Yeah. Or when silence stops being awkward between people. Or, as Anna put it, reflecting on her own role. When you stop interviewing and just listen.
So stripping away the literal clothes somehow led to stripping away metaphorical layers too. Defenses, roles.
It seems that way. It fostered a kind of raw, genuine connection that maybe wouldn't happen otherwise.
And for Anna and David, personally, this intense shared experience had a lasting impact.
It certainly did. The source concludes by noting they returned to Paris 6 months later as newlyweds.
Wow.
And David apparently still calls it the best assignment of my life. Not just professionally, you imagine.
Clearly not. What a journey. From a teacher's weary suggestion on the radio, picked up from a TikTok scroll, to this utterly unique national experiment, and ultimately, these incredibly profound personal and collective discoveries.
It really shows how stepping far outside the norm, even with a measure as extreme as this, can unexpectedly peel back layers we didn't even know were there, uncovering integrity, vulnerability, real connection.
So thinking about all this, the naked exam, the strange truth of the sock paradox.
Yeah.
It does leave you wondering, doesn't it?
It really does. And maybe the thought to leave you, our listeners, with is this. What aspects of your own life are, in a way, performed for others? Where do you put on your metaphorical clothing, your roles, your defenses? And where, if anywhere, do you allow yourself to be truly unencumbered, completely present?
And maybe, just maybe, what hidden anxieties, or perhaps what unexpected freedoms might you find if you dared to shed some of those layers yourself? Something to think about.
While the TikTok posting that inspired the story was real, posted by RTL Tracy on TikTok, as is the issue of cheating in academia, an increasingly challenging issue to police, particularly with the increasing use of AI, this is a review of a story, a work of fiction, published in Literotica by the author Stacked Whispers. Sometimes such stories enable us to consider the problems from a different perspective. It is a gentle poke at some of the very complex challenges that are engulfing us currently. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other podcasts, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.